Hey there everybody, Pete Pardo here from Sea of Tranquility. Welcome to another edition of Ranking the Albums. Today we're going to take a look at the studio albums of two bands, but they're so closely linked together that I decided to do them all in one show. So we're talking about Britain's very own jazz, rock, blues combo Colosseum, as well as the sister band, the fusion act Colosseum II. So both bands started by a guy named Jon Hiseman, a drummer extraordinaire, big into jazz and blues, who decided to put a combo together that also kind of dipped a little bit into prog. Most prog fans love Colosseum and Colosseum II. So a lot of great members have gone in and out of this band throughout the years. Colosseum still somewhat in existence today. All right, but let's talk a little bit about the members first of all. The current members of the band. So you got Dave Clemson on guitars and vocals, Mark Clark on bass, Chris Farlow on vocals, Kim Nishikawa on saxophones, Adrian Askew on organ, and Malcolm Mortimer on drums. That's the current lineup of the band. Okay, but the classic lineup of Colosseum, of course, was founder Jon Hiseman, who sadly left us a couple of years ago. Dave Greenslade on organ, keyboards. Dick Hextall-Smith on saxophones, flutes. James Lidlin on guitars and vocals. Tony Reeves on bass. Briefly, a guy named Jim Roche on guitar. Louis Sinamo on bass. Barbara Thompson played saxophone later on in the career of Colosseum. And then over on to, Colosseum II, of course, you have Gary Moore on guitar, Jon Hiseman on drums. You've got Don Airey on keyboards, and I'm forgetting the first name of the bass player, John Mole, on bass, but also Neil Murray played bass on their first album. So there you have the lineups. Okay, so now let's talk about the albums. So they've got a total of 10 studio albums. All right, so what I've done is I've mixed them all together here and basically ranked them in my order of preference. I think that there's enough similarities in the Colosseum catalog to do so, even though the Colosseum II stuff is more instrumental, other than their first album, which has a good amount of vocals on it. It's mostly instrumental stuff, very Return to Forever Mahavishnu Orchestra-ish, right? Whereas the early Colosseum stuff, a little more rooted in the blues and jazz, rock, and prog as well. Okay, you've got, the reeds and the horns and things like that popping in and out of the music. Obviously a bit more vocal-oriented, but still with a lot of great instrumental passages. So I'm going to kind of start number 10, work my way to number 1 as I always do. So there's a couple recent albums, and recent meaning in the last 20, 25 years or so, that I don't have on CD. But I have everything else, so we'll start at the beginning. So my number 10, coming at number 10 is going to be their 2014 release. This is Colosseum. All right, I'll try and differentiate between the two. It's called Time on Our Side. I can appreciate the band kind of coming back and trying to, do it again here in modern times, which, totally get it. Give them credit for it. They're all older and wiser and stuff like that. I find the more recent albums pretty bland, actually. Like Time on Our Side for 2014, it's like a lot of the kind of daring jazz and fusion and prog stuff that they were doing back in the day. It's more, their newer music is more kind of like standard blues rock. Okay. And in 2014, they decided to carry on without Dick Hextall-Smith. They've got Barbara Thompson in his place, on sax and what have you. City Love is a good tune. Anno Domini, pretty good, but I find much of the album pretty unmemorable, just kind of like by the numbers blues rock. And Chris Farlow, whose voice has held up great over the decades, finally, and this is their most recent release, his voice finally starting to show. He's starting to show his age and sound his age. I would say his vocals on this album are not great. Obviously, the guy's in his 70s, so totally understandable. But this was 6 years ago. This album came out. Maybe by now they've decided recording new music probably maybe not in the cards anymore. I don't know. I know they still play live when they can. Obviously, not right now. So that comes in at number 10. Coming in at number 9, we're going to go to 2003 for Tomorrow's Blues. Again, another fairly by-the-numbers bland blues rock album. But I think, Clem Clemson does throw in some pretty tasty guitar work on this album. The title track is pretty good kind of hard-driving blues tune. And the instrumental, Arena in the Sun, is pretty thrilling, actually. I almost wish they'd do more stuff like that. Good guitars and keyboards and sax on that particular song. And a lot of horns on this album, a lot of guest stars on various, trumpets and things and what have you. Like I said, it's okay if you stack it up next to the old Colosseum stuff, though. That's where you kind of like, yeah. But, give them credit for still doing it, right? Coming in at number 8 from 1997, their reunion album, Bread and Circuses. Actually, of the 3 latter period albums, this one for me is the most successful. It's kind of safe. Contains all the classic band, but there are some good songs on here. Watching Your Every Move is solid. The Other Side of the Sky. The Playground's pretty cool. It's got kind of a nice slow build. Rocks out a little bit, but still plenty jazzy. The whole album is laid back and bluesy, but, Chris Farlowe, to his credit, sounds really good on this album. So again, I know it's 97, so 23 years ago, but he still sounds, at that point in time, sounds pretty good. So, not a terrible album. Easily the best of the 3 latter period ones. All right, so now let's go into the stuff that I do have here. So coming in at number 7 from 1970, Daughter of Time. So this is the first album where Chris Farlowe makes an appearance on lead vocals. A little bit of shift in the music here. The songs have become shorter, a bit more vocal-oriented. 10, great song. It's actually 10, amen, right? / amen, comma, amen. 10, amen. You got horns and vocals up front, very big and jazzy. Time Lament blends a little bit of kind of classical. There's like a little bit of kind of classical feel on some of the songs on here. Got classical, blues, and jazz all kind of colliding on this track. Take Me Back to Doomsday is pretty piano-driven, but also has got some good rocking guitars from Clem Clemson. The title track also has those kind of sweeping orchestrations and strings and things. There's a cover of Theme for an Imaginary Western, the old Pete Brown and Jack Bruce classic, of course, made famous by Leslie Weston Mountain. Bring Out Your Dead. It's got a great Hammond organ solo from David Greenslade. What a fantastic keyboard player. Got a lot of wah-wah guitar from Clem Clemson on that song. Downhill and Shadows, longer blues piece. Really good Chris Farlowe vocal. Some stinging guitar work from Clem. And then to finish off the album, you've got a pretty storming live drum solo from Jon Hiseman on the song Time Machine, which was actually recorded from their performance in 1970 at the Royal Albert Hall. And this album, of course, was released in 1970. So, good, solid album. I would say of the early period Colosseum stuff, probably the weakest out of all of them, but still weak. Let's not really use weak. It's still a very enjoyable album. I just think that the others are a bit better, but still very, very good. All right, so coming up next, what do we got? So that was number 7. Number 6. Okay, so here's an interesting thing here. So you'll notice I am pulling up the Valentines Sweet album. That's actually not the album I'm going to talk about. So I'm going to actually talk about The Grass is Greener. You'll notice pretty much the same cover, right? Different title, same cover. A little bit darker hues there. All right, so basically in 1969, the band released Valentines Sweet in the UK. They turned around in the US not quite a year later, early 1970, and decided to release The Grass is Greener, which basically is the US version of Valentines Sweet. The thing is, a lot of different songs on it. And you got a somewhat different lineup. So James Litherland already out on guitars and vocals. Clem Clemson in on guitars and vocals. Fresh from, what's the name of that band he was in? Bakerloo, I believe it was. And a very different album. Okay, couple tracks are the same, but the album's got a little bit of a different feel. Obviously, different track list. And, the big, long Valentines Suite, obviously not on this album. So Jumping Off the Sun, which is the first song on here. Very, very cool tune. It actually sounds like Cream. It's almost like they brought Clem in for a reason, right? He's replacing Litherland here. The thing is, I think they found out early on, the reason why they brought Chris Farlow into the band is like neither Litherland or Clemson really have strong lead vocals. They're competent enough, but I think you find on those first couple Colosseum albums that, the vocals are not really the strong point. They're okay, but they're not really the strong point. Here, Clem kind of sounds like a weak Jack Bruce, but the song itself is big and beefy and kind of rocking, kind of like Cream, like I said. Los Angeles, very jazzy, but with a scorching guitar solo from Clem. Killer Jon Hiseman drums. You got Elegy and Buddy's Blues are very similar, kind of bluesy, kind of jazzy. You got Rope Ladder to the Moon, another Pete Brown and Jack Bruce song, jazzy and mellow. They do a nice take on the classic bolero with some acrobatic Hammond organ and guitar solos. Lots of Tony Reeves bass grooves going throughout that. The Machine Demands a Sacrifice is a quick little bluesy shuffle with some nice flute and sax from Hextall Smith, who's a fine player. And then there's a section of the Valentines Sweet, okay, which is basically the title track. So it's like a 7-minute section of that longer suite at the album, kind of finishes it all off. It's a little bit longer than that section of the song in the original Valentines Suite. All in all, a good album, though. A very, very enjoyable album, which I kind of enjoy quite a bit. All right, next up, we're going to go to, and that was 1970, so now let's fast forward to 1976, the debut from Colosseum II, Strange New Flesh. So like I said, this is Don Airey, Gary Moore, Jon Hiseman, Neil Murray, doing a complete blank there, and a guy named Mike Starr on vocals, who, after he would leave Colosseum 2, would actually go join Lucifer's Friends a little bit down the road. Good debut. Okay, good debut. It's more vocal-oriented than the other two Colosseum 2 tracks. So it's mostly vocal tunes. I think there's like two instrumentals and 4 with vocals, something like that. Mike's got kind of like a Chris Farlow style voice going on here, though he's not quite as good. All right, so you got Gemini and Leo starts things off. It's kind of like that's in the middle. Sorry, Gemini and Leo is kind of like a funky jazz pop piece. You got Dark Side of the Moog is actually what kicks things off. That's a blazing instrumental with great synth work from Don Airey and blistering guitar work from Gary Moore. Really, really good tune. Got Neil Murray on bass. That's probably the highlight song on here. You got On Second Thoughts is a great Return to Forever Jeff Beck style piece that should have been left as an instrumental. That's the problem I have with this album. Mike Starr's vocals, they're okay. Nothing much to write home about. And I think most of these songs would have been better as instrumentals. Okay. Winds starts off with a drum solo, then turns into a blazing kind of fusion romp, a la Return to Forever, a Mahavishnu Orchestra. That again should have been an instrumental. As soon as the vocals kick in, you're like, oh damn, man. If you get the reissue of this album, has additional cuts not on the album, a bunch of demo things and what have you. So I think an additional 8 or 10 tracks, alternate versions and demo songs that didn't make the album, what have you. So that's the one to track down. I do not have that one. I'm actually gonna be on the lookout for that. So that comes in at number 5. Coming in at number 4, we're going to go with the Colosseum's debut from 1969. Those Who Are About to Die Salute You. Really good, really strong debut. It starts off with Walking in the Park from the cover version of the old Grand Bond favorite, which has some smoking James Litherland wah-wah solos and nice organ from Greenslade. Okay, lots of sax. Plenty Hard Luck has some complex rhythms, tasty guitars and sax. You got Mandarin, which is a pure jazz rock. Great bass, great sax. The song Debut brings a bit of funk. Okay, Beware the Ides of March has a very interesting song. It actually has a similar melody to Procol Harum's Whiter Shade of Pale. I remember the first time I heard it, I was like, wait a second, is that like a cover version of that song? It actually is not, but it's you listen to it, and it's like, holy cow, it's about the same. And then you got the title track, which is full of smoking Hammond organ from Dave Greenslade, with some tricky rhythms and a pretty furious guitar solo from James Litherland. Kind of this parts of this album, and especially that song, a lot like Ian Carr's Nucleus. So if you like Nucleus, definitely check out some of this Colosseum stuff, because it's not that far off the beaten path right there. All right, coming in at number 3, we're going to go to 1977's Electric Savage from Colosseum II. All right, pretty damn special album. It's their second album. You got kicks things off with Put It This Way, which ranks up there with some of the most aggressive of the Electric Return to Forever material. It's complex, it's heavy, yet it's melodic. It's got great mini moog from Don Airey and some absolutely scalding guitar licks from Gary Moore. Only one vocal track on this album, which is pretty good. They decided to go more instrumental. Gary Moore actually handles the vocals on the one vocal track. You got All Skin and Bones, somewhat funky. Okay, The Scorch is pretty proggy with plenty of synths, kind of atmospheric. Lament is also kind of atmospheric. You got Desperado, blazer of a classic fusion song. Am I, laid back and atmospheric. And then you got Intergalactic Strut kicks off with a Jon Hiseman drum solo, and then plows into funky fusion realm, not unlike like classic Billy Cobham and Alphonse Mouzon. All right, which is kind of really cool to hear, and it's got some really great Gary Moore guitar work. I tell you, if you only know Gary Moore from his hard rock stuff in the 80s and his blues stuff in the 90s and beyond, I definitely think you should check out some of these Colosseum II albums for his supreme jazz rock chops. Very, very cool. All right, number 2 from 1969, we're going to go with Valentines Sweet. Okay, their second album. This, of course, is the UK version of this album, like I said earlier. This is, in my opinion, Colosseum's best album. Killer bluesy jazz rock throughout. You got some, just fantastic James Litherland guitar solos throughout this album. Great keyboards from David Greenslade, especially the Hammond on the epic title track, which to my mind brings, images of the Nice with Keith Emerson, as well as some of the early Soft Machine stuff. It's kind of a reason why I wore the Soft Machine shirt today, right? The Kettle rocks, elegies, bluesy fun. Litherland's not a great singer, but he does okay on this album. I think it's not, his vocals aren't terrible. Hiseman puts on a drum clinic throughout. You got Dick Hextall Smith is a very, very fine sax player. Just this album flows really, really nicely and has some just absolutely spectacular instrumental passages on the album. It's a really, really, really strong album. It would have been my number 1 except for, of course, War Dance by Colosseum II. Their final album, their best album, in my opinion, and the best album to come from both of these combos. Again, very much like the classic lineup of Return to Forever, Correa, Dimiola, Clark, White. Though it's heavier. Got John Moll on bass here, joining the other guys. Really, really good stuff. Funky grooves throughout. Okay, you got Put It That Way, hard rockin' kind of prog fusion. Fighting Talk has a kind of a freeway jam, Jeff Beck feel to it, sort of. The Inquisition blazes with some terrific Gary Moore guitar work that has kind of like a Spanish flair. Really, really cool. Again, reminded of classic Return to Forever. It's complex. You got Star Maiden / Mysterioso / Quasar as kind of like a spacey, jazzy number with some really cool bass lines from Mole. You got Last Exit is majestic prog fusion, and the only one song with vocals on this one, and that's Castles with Gary singing. Nice song. It's like it's almost like on the 2 latter period Colosseum II albums, they one track of vocals, and each one are kind of more like in the pop range, right? So there you have it. Colosseum and Colosseum II, my recommendations for you. Going to start number 1, War Dance from Colosseum II at number 1. Number 2, Valentines Sweet from Colosseum. Number 3, Electric Savage from Colosseum II. Number 4, Those Who Are About to Die Salute You from Colosseum. Number 5, Strange New Flesh from Colosseum II. Number 6, The Grass is Greener from Colosseum. Number 7, Daughter of Time from Colosseum. Number 8, Bread and Circuses from Colosseum. 9, Tomorrow's Blues from Colosseum. And 10, Time on Our Side, the last release from any of these combos from Colosseum in 2014. So curious to see what you guys think about this really cool 2 bands, right? It's like you kind of want to call them one, but they really are 2 bands, but so closely aligned, I figured let's just do a show on all of them. I do want to throw out there this pretty terrific Colosseum live album, which is smoking. Definitely, if you're going to investigate some of these, I would recommend getting this as well. Great performances on there. So there you have it. Colosseum and Colosseum II. Visit us on the web at www.seatranquility.org. We're on Facebook, we're on Twitter, of course, we're here on YouTube all the damn time. Coming up today, Tonight, actually, an interview with Annie Haslam from Renaissance. You don't want to miss that. Tomorrow morning, Deep Cut Dive with Jack Toledano, Led Zeppelin. Another cool show. What else? All sorts of stuff happening this week, guys. So stay tuned for all of it, and we'll see you soon. Bye-bye.